Hi, I'm Brad Brown with the IHSA. One of the things we noticed with hoisting and rigging when we go out to construction projects is that workers often don't know the advantages and disadvantages between different types of rigging materials and different hardware that they're going to use in the field. Today's video is going to talk about synthetic slings and some of the advantages and disadvantages to synthetic slings, and we're going to walk through an inspection of a standard synthetic sling. Now, of course, keep in mind that you want to follow any manufacturer's instructions you've got for that sling because they might have different criteria for replacement than what we're going to talk about in this video. Now, when we look at our synthetic slings, they're typically going to be made from nylon or polyester. There are other varieties out there, but nylon and polyester are the most common, with nylon being the typical one we find on construction projects. Now, when we use our synthetic slings, they're really good for hugging the load. They mold well to the shape of the object. They also have less tendency to mar or scratch delicate materials like some of our other rigging, such as wire rope slings, might do. Now, they don't crush very easily. If I were to put a load down on top of my synthetic sling, it doesn't crush just like some of our chains or our wire rope slings might. Now, they're also non-sparking, which is very advantageous because they're not made of metal. They're very lightweight and versatile. They don't have any sharp edges that we have to worry about, and you can get them in a variety of different sling configurations, such as I slings, twisted eye slings, and endless slings. Any inspection of our synthetic slings has to start with the label. This label has to be present on our synthetic slings, as we have no way of actually calculating the working load limit because there's too many factors involved. We have to be able to legibly see the working load limit and be able to work from there. When we inspect the sling body, we want to look and feel our way down the sling. It's important to feel it as well as just look at it, because sometimes we can feel something like a ground-in contaminant before we can actually see it on the sling itself. We look along the sling, we're checking for rips, we're checking for cuts, tears, abrasions, any material that's ground into the synthetic material. We're also going to be looking for UV damage, chemical damage, anything that doesn't look right with the sling, checking for frayed stitching all the way along the entire body of the sling. We also want to ensure at this stage that it's not overly saturated with water. Next, we want to check the eyes of the sling for damage. We want to check where the eye joins together and check for any loose or damaged stitching in there. We also want to pay special attention to the bearing point where we're going to be hooking this to our crane hook or our hoisting device, or perhaps where we're choking the sling to make our lifts, because this is the spot that's most likely to start to see damage first. Then, of course, we inspect the rest of the sling, looking for damaged stitching or any cuts, abrasions, burns, UV damage, or any of the other things we discussed earlier. So while our synthetic slings do have distinct advantages, we have to take certain precautions and understand the limitations of our synthetic slings as well. Now, synthetic slings are very susceptible to cutting and ripping, so we must use abrasion protection or softeners around any sharp edges when we're hoisting. Also, unless specified, we typically don't use synthetic slings at temperatures higher than 90 degrees Celsius. Now, there are some varieties out there where the manufacturer rates them for higher temperatures, but as a general rule, we want to not work with them higher than 90 degrees Celsius. They're also very susceptible to burns, chemical damage, and UV damage, so we need to be really careful about the way that we store and use our synthetic slings. In addition, nylon slings specifically get weaker when they get wet, so we need to store them in a dry location and not use them when they're overly saturated with water. So as with any of our slings that we use for hoisting and rigging, we want to make sure to oversize the slings wherever possible. The working load limits set on the slings are set in the factory with new equipment under perfect conditions. So we can't always expect that the working load limit is going to be accurate for what we're doing in the field. We want to make sure to store our synthetic slings in a cool, dry, dark location outside of the sun because, again, they are very susceptible to UV damage. And of course, we want to make sure that we follow our manufacturer's instructions because they might have different criteria for replacement, storage, and service than what we've discussed in this video. Please visit our website at www.IHSA.ca and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more safety videos.